But we wanted to be a space where Black folks, Indigenous, people of color, trans, queer people felt comfortable. My thing for Bruise Violet Collective was wanting to also create a space, you know, that we could like invite people to come out, and also to showcase a bunch of like talented people that we know, you know. So that was kind of what we were initially kind of like were thinking when we started the collective.
Without these women, without this space, my art wouldn't see the light of day, because I'm a Black woman here in Fresno, and so people don't even think about me as an artist, though I've been creating art here for, it has to be upwards of 20 years now. Like I'm 36, you know, so like I've just been making art since I could, you know, since I was able to.
Because a lot of times in Fresno, you do see the same stuff over and over again, the same artists being recognized, which that's really cool for them, but other people do exist.
It's definitely all about putting the people who have been left behind to the front. And I think too, like, there's a lot of change happening.
Everyone in the collective is just so talented in their own right. So that's what makes it so beautiful. Like we're all able to collaborate and bring something to the table. This is kind of a space where we can kind of like cultivate, you know, people to be comfortable.
So my name is Abigail Jensen, and my work can be described as very colorful. It started with making piñatas. So my mom, she always had this old photograph of her and her friends from like a church group making a massive amount of piñatas. And I loved that photo because it just looked like they had so much fun doing that. So as I was growing up, I would make piñatas for my birthday parties, for my sister's birthday parties. I started working a lot more with paper in the last 5 years. I started out with making paper flowers just as a way to make some kind of supplemental income. And from there, I was asked to do workshops. I would work in different community spaces, provide these workshops, usually with some kind of cultural aspect, mainly like from the Mexican culture. So during the seasons of like the fall, like Dia de los Muertos, and working with paper, I've tried to work just on smaller art pieces or with smaller works, just because I'm trying not to go outside a lot. And I also feel that it could be very wasteful to do really large projects, especially at this time, and it's kind of been making me a little bit more conscious of what materials I use and what can be broken down later. More recently, I started to make paper dolls, and I don't really know what the idea or how it even started, but I did have some influence from, again, my mom. She got me a lot of books when I was younger of paper dolls, and so I just wanted to create things for just for myself. And I think I was also working on a project at the time where I had to, or where I decided to create these paper figures. And from there, I think that's kind of when folks would ask me to make them one, or I would incorporate it in other pieces. And it's just, I kind of like that. I like that when I make something, I could potentially get work from it as well. I think that's been something that I'm very fortunate and grateful for, because yeah, just trying to be an artist out here, trying to make it. I play the violin. I play music with Cholito Sound System. I DJ. I dance. What else do I do? I feel like I can make a lot of things. If I just have this idea and just want to make it, I usually can. And I really appreciate that I have those skills, because it just kind of takes me away from whatever other stresses that I would have, and creating something totally different that doesn't exist it always elevates those feelings.
Hello, my name is Vishena Turner. I am the bassist for Squid Ink and Fatty Cakes and the Puff Pastries. In the collective, I am a visual artist, and so I've created dioramas that we are going to use hopefully for this. And I also, just in general, am an all-around artist. I do murals, I sculpture, paint, anything you could think of. I've probably tried it at least once. So, yes, that's kind of my jam right now. Recently, I actually just did a mural project with a nonprofit here in Fresno, and we got to paint a mural off of. It's really close to here, just about 2 or 3 blocks away from where we're doing this interview right now. But the mural is an image of a woman laying on her side with just this beautiful like contentment and rest on her face, because the whole idea for that mural was to release some of the tension that has been going on in the world. And it was all Black women, and we basically depicted there's farmland, the woman lying on her side, and poppies. So we wanted to include the California poppies because that's where we all live. And we also wanted to include agriculture because Black folks, I feel like Black folks tend to be left out of the farming communities. And whenever folks talk about farming and things like that, when really that's what we actually were brought here for. So, yeah.
Well, I think like probably the earliest and probably the first kind of medium that I got into was photography. Photography, then kind of like melded into filmmaking. I was able to get like my first cameras in high school and just filming with that. And I just loved filmmaking because not only it's just the visual component, you're getting the sound. And then in promoting the film, you're getting like the graphics part of it. So the movie posters, the VHS covers and stuff. And that always drew me in as a kid. So as I've gotten older, I was thinking like, am I doing too much? Wanting to try to do all these different things. But I'm like, no, it all connects for me. Like the filmmaking part of it, and then wanting to know like how can I present this film to people, and that's where like the illustration and the graphic design element comes into it. And not even just with filmmaking, graphic design also with music, so album covers, magazine covers and stuff. Like that's always been something that I've very been drawn to. And then with music, which is probably the last thing I got into because I didn't really feel like it was going to be at all attainable thing for me, because like I didn't grow up with like musicians in my house. You know, I didn't really think about asking for an instrument as a kid. You know, and I wish I would have now, but I think it was just the encouragement of the people that I met, part of the collective, in particular Vishena, just kind of seeing that, you know, hearing that I love music. I listen to it all the time. I would buy records constantly. High school, I was that kid making mixtapes and stuff. So I feel like that definitely has come full circle for me. I want to do illustration and I want to do music, and thinking like, how can I kind of put that all together in a project now? Kind of thinking all those things at the same time. Before, where I kind of would just do one thing for a little bit and then kind of like move on to the next thing. And I feel like with that, I was always having to start from the beginning, you know, when I wanted to come back to a certain like either music or drawing, because I've been away for it a while. But now I'm kind of figuring out how I can do them all together. With filmmaking, it really is the ultimate collaborative kind of project. Like there's so much that goes into it. So I love that prospect of it.
Yeah. Are there any filmmakers that have been influential?
Oh yeah, totally. John Waters. I just love his. I think also too. I think what gets me for him is that he places all his films in Baltimore, and as I kind of start thinking of films that I want to create, growing up in Fresno and the Valley and stuff like that, just having that be like a backdrop. So that kind of always influenced me, how he used Baltimore in his films. And then I would probably have to say Cheryl Dunye. whose work I'm kind of more newer to recently. Thanks to this pandemic, I've had time to binge a bunch of stuff, and I absolutely just fell in love with The Watermelon Woman. That was such an incredible film, and I'm so happy it exists, because the filmmakers that I admire, unfortunately, I still don't see people that look like me a lot in their films, and then of course their protagonists are usually, unfortunately, not someone else that looks like me either. So I think the Cheryl Dunye, her character worked in a video store and just was like a total movie nerd. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been like wanting to see. So just, I'm definitely happy that I was able to come across her work recently.
So my name's Audrey Johnson. I'm a drummer. I play other instruments as well, but my main thing's playing drums. And I play with Squid Ink, which has many members in Bruise Violet Collective, Fatty Cakes and the Puff Pastries, 1800. I came from like a musical family, I guess. My parents don't play music, but like everybody else in the family plays music. My parents, I feel like they would be really good music producers, to be honest. I feel like they can hear, they have really good ears and stuff. And so I just grew up like with them listening to music all the time in the house. And then my mom's dad would play guitar for us in Spanish and sing in Spanish. And all her brothers play instruments, and basically most of my cousins. Then on my dad's side, all his sisters are like gospel singers. I'm not a singer by any means, but I can scream distantly in the background. That's about it. So I think I just grew up with just family members like always playing music, or any family event. One of my uncles is like an amazing musician. He could play literally any instrument. And so I always wanted to play saxophone because he plays sax as like a main instrument. And but I got into it, and I still like it, but I was like, oh, I need to do something else. I need to be more free with my body. So then that's how drumming came along. But I basically, just grew up in a music all around me type of situation.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that about drumming, because having watched you drum, it is extremely, I suppose all drummers are like this, and every drummer has their own style, but you are extremely like active, and it is like this amazing dance.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Drumming.
It's like the only dance I do. I feel like I'm just a very bad dancer, but I will play drums. Since the beginning of quarantine, I've started with a garden with my roommates and my partner, or roommate and partner, and I've never done anything like that before. But since then, we've helped my parents have a garden in their house, and Janelle, my partner's brother, he has a garden now at his place, and that's been pretty cool. Right now, it doesn't look so good now that the seasons are changing, but it's been really cool. The main goal of that is honestly to try to break away from capitalism and grow our own food and learn how to do things so that we can just be people on our own without having to rely on anybody else. Some other recent projects, I got to work with this really amazing artist, Omar Rodriguez Lopez, who's the guitarist for the Mars Volta, and at the drive-in, he's like super real dude. And we did an album together, or I got to do it with him in Germany a couple years ago, and it was finally released this year. And I recently found out we're number 37 on the Billboard charts for like new artists or something, which he's not a new artist, but all the rest of us that played with him were. And that was really sick. So that's pretty sweet.
My name is Amber Fargano. I am in the Bruise Violet Collective. As a member, a lot of the things I do includes organizing a lot of events, also promoting said events, and collaborating with Amber Williams on a lot of the flyers. I do a lot of the drawing, and then she provides a lot of the beautiful text. Along with that, I'm also in the band Fatty Cakes and the Puff Pastries. I'm Fatty Cakes. I'm the lead singer, and I play ukulele, and I write a lot of the lyrics as well. So this is my mural. It actually is based off of some flyer art that I did for the Bruise Violet Collective for a show that we had with, who was it with? It was at Tower District Records with some really wonderful friends. And yeah, I don't know, I'm just really into cherubs. And, this is in my house. And I made a lot of changes in my life before painting this mural. I basically became the sole person who lived in this house. I separated from someone and experienced a lot of change. And I just wanted to have a really sweet, heavenly vibe. I'm not a religious person, but I just think that cherub and like heaven imagery is really like cute and pretty and serene, and a little bit like ties into the goddess Venus, a little love and beauty. And so I needed that in my space, and yeah, I did that. Before the pandemic, I was a very busy person. I was working 40 hours a week. We kind of talked about this. I was, playing music full time, playing a show almost every week, out of town, so driving for hours. In a serious relationship, that takes time too. And so my friend was saying, maybe you should take a break from the band too, give some time for yourself. And I was like, no way, there's no way, I would never take a break from the band. And then it's like the universe, I know the pandemic did not happen for me to take a break, but it forced me to do it. And so it's, this time has been a lot of like reflection and healing and learning who I am again, because of the roles that I played. I am not the band. I'm Amber Fargano, and so having to relearn that and then bring back who I am into my craft, and make sure that Fatty Cakes isn't just one-dimensional, isn't just, this character and this costume or mask I put on to navigate the world. Because at some point, because I was going through hard things, it became that. It became just, now I'm Fatty Cakes, and it's just easier to navigate as Fatty Cakes versus Amber. So I'd say that's also affected my craft, because now the music that I'm writing is coming, not that the music before wasn't personal, it was very personal, but it was also very community driven. It was trying to take on bigger ideas, bigger than me, bigger than any of us in the band. And now a lot of things have changed and happened to where I'm writing a lot of songs that are very personal, that are about healing. I've also fallen in love a couple times. So, and I'm a Pisces and a queer, and so we pine. So, so there's a lot of songs that are about pining. And yeah, and I could fall in and out of love many more times. This is who I am. So I feel like, yeah, a lot of songs about pining right now. Trying to return more to drawing and painting and printmaking too, and trying to figure out how to create art that's not about creating capital, because a lot of my art was either for flyers for events or for merch, and then outside of that I just wasn't creating anything else outside of that. And so now trying to figure out how to create art that's just art, and that's purpose is to just be expression, and not a purpose of like, how can I use this to survive in a financial way. Instead, survive just in a way of being. So yeah, I'd say this pandemic has caused me to do a lot of slowing down and a lot of rethinking, and a lot of removing infrastructure in my mind of how to make your art fit into capitalism. So, and how to, how to use your art to get ahead, and instead just using art, really getting back to that truth of art as a form of therapy.
I think that if the city reached out to the artists that are the ones that are not so much in a headspace of just doing something that's performative for the sake of performance, but reaching out to those folks that actually want to make some kind of community change and involvement, I think that art can just be that kind of vessel that brings people together. We're brown and black folks, we're queer, we're trans, we're just all these different mystical beings, and not a lot of folks want to be around that. or they're afraid for some reason, or maybe they just don't trust that we could see something that hasn't existed yet.
I think Fresno is kind of an interesting place to grow up in. Like for me, I always wanted to leave, like as a younger person, and I just never expected that I would be here as long as I've been here. But I realized there are just like so many amazing people here, and it's like anywhere, you know, you got to find your right clique or something. But I think there's a lot of art being made here, and it's in a way, I think because we're not in LA or San Francisco, like we're a big city, but we're like, it's kind of weird. It's like a strange small town mentality in a way with a lot of people, but there's also this really cool group of folks, or, you know, several groups of folks that are doing really awesome things. And I feel like maybe as I got into like my 20s, I realized maybe I don't have to leave and we can be a part of creating something that's really special here.
I grew up here. Yeah, I've never really lived anywhere else other than like Reedley or Bakersfield, but it's still the Valley. It was my family, my mother and her sisters who migrated here from Louisiana. So, yeah, just kind of came as a caravan of women basically, and they all set up along the valley and in LA. Growing up here has absolutely affected how I create music, how I create anything, to be honest, because I feel like a lot of the time it's I've created. I guess when I was younger, I could say I created from reaction to things because I felt oppressed or I felt like I didn't have a voice, and so I used art as a way to be seen or heard without having to take a stance, a super loud stance that I would be like persecuted for or like, you know, just ostracized for or whatever. But now as an adult, I've definitely taken that more like more of a direct approach because, you know, it's less about fitting in now. You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of our songs for Fatty Cakes and the Puff Pastries on our self-titled LP, a lot of it came from personal experience in Fresno, in the community. And it definitely, yeah, I think it definitely creates art that just comes from a very personal place, and everything here is personal, you know. Politics aren't just politics in Fresno. It's about civil rights here. It's about experience, erasure, oppression, suppression. So I think a lot of really beautiful art blossoms as an act of resistance to that. There's also not a lot of mental health resources, and so I think that's also why some really cool art and music comes from here, because you gotta DIY it, and art and music is a great way to DIY your own mental health.
If you were to set a movie here, what would be some of the elements that might make it into the movie? Essential,
Yeah.
sort of, not even things or objects, but
Yeah.
just feelings.
Oh, yeah.
Or things like that that might make it into that film.
What I do love about Fresno is that there was at least places that had kind of not been touched with time, kind of just been neglected, but you got like still like this really cool architecture that still was around, but now everything's just so modernized, and it just, I don't know, maybe that would be my story. Just the horrors of urban sprawl that we have here, and just seeing how segregated the city is. Like, one of the ideas I've had is talking about, like, in a horror sense of just being in the wrong place in the wrong time in this town, you know? I mean, driving around the neighborhood and you come across a street that's filled with American flags on every single house, you know, and Trump signs. So it's just kind of like creating that sense of dread and fear that you do sometimes feel in the city. So that would probably make it into a film I would make if it were set here. And of course, as a kid, you know, you just want to get out of here. But I feel like coming back, I'm seeing as I'm creating art, it helps to kind of connect with people in places like this where we don't know if we're, you know, finding other people who feel and think like us, you know. So that to me has kind of shown like how art can help in places like Fresno, just connecting with other people and building some sort of community.
So if Fresno had a sound, you know, honestly, for me, the sound of Fresno that I love the most. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Is the sound of trains. Yeah, Fresno has this weird thing where like trains go through the city, and that's so like not great city planning at all. But they always pass in a time when you need something to remind you to keep going. And in a place that is so like still and stagnant sometimes feeling, there's actually so much beautiful motion here. And as someone who struggles with mental health and has, talked before about the lack of mental health resources, and that all ties into political spectrums too. Yeah, sometimes you just need something that is a piece of relief and a piece of motion to remind you don't stop, keep going, even if it's hard. So I'd say the sound of Fresno to me is a train passing by. You have still moments and you get to experience them. It's like at night and your windows are down and it's like so loud and like it like vibrates through your body, and it's just like, it's just cleansing. It's really powerful too. So yeah.
There's a train sound in every interview that I've done. Including the one I did one Friday in Davis. Just sound of Fresno, great.
Oh my goodness. I'm used to it now, but yes. I definitely, and it's like always when I start a movie too, this train is always loud. This is a service one.
Yeah.
So usually I can tell if it's Amtrak or a service
Oh,
train.
you can tell the different ones, of course you can.
Yeah.
This sound needs to make it into the sound design of the Fresno horror film that you're
Oh
gonna
yes,
make.
yes it does. Yes, and sirens, helicopters.
Trains, sirens, and helicopters.
all those wonderful sounds that make Fresno so terrifying.
Helicopters, fireworks that go off at 2 in the morning, a lot of foot traffic. It sounds like people searching through garbage bins. It sounds like folks driving really fast unnecessarily. And sometimes it's just quiet. So quiet. The only thing you can really hear are the birds. You know what I wish there was a lot of more sounds? I wish there was music. I wish there was more people that weren't afraid to just blast their music.
Honestly, well, I feel like Fresno's like an over-policed city. So to me, the sound of Fresno was like helicopters and sirens and just people hustling, I guess, like just the rhythm of people. One time I was at behind Broadway Studios after an art hop, and it was like late at night, and I heard this sound of like something really cool sounding, and I went and looked, and it was like a gang of beer cans blowing down the street. So that's the sound of Fresno. It's just a gang of beer cans blowing down the street.
So like
I'm just kidding.
clattering.
Yeah, so cluttering for sure. I just think it's just like all the everything, but I think it makes a rhythm too. I feel like all these sounds make a beat, and I'm into that too. So
The sound of Fresno is punk. I feel that there, yeah, like punk is. I feel like punk has to be the best, because now that I'm thinking about it, it's like you have to go against the grain, right? You tend to, as punks, like create spaces for yourself, right? You tend to have communities based in punk, and so I feel like that is the ultimate Fresno sound, because of the conservativeness here, because of the separation that there is, like creating spaces for ourselves has been what our saving grace is. It's what our therapy is. So yeah, like the rebellion of Fresno, I guess, would be the punk sound. Yeah. And like I was saying, one of the first times I'd seen an all-girl band was a punk band, and so I was immediately in love. I was immediately thrown into that world. But as I looked around, there wasn't very many punks who looked like me or Audrey, actually. And so we then created spaces where more of us got to be there, more of us got to take up space. And so, again, that Fresno sound is that punk sound.